cut the signs of tzarat, affliction. Beware of tzarat, affliction. Verse 9. Do not speak lashon hara and do not slander. Remember what Hashem your God did to Miriam. Now verse 10. Dignity of the borrower. When you make your fellow a loan in any amount, you shall not enter his home to take a security. Number one rule is, if you need a pledge, you need security, allow him to give it to you. Don't enter his home and decide what you want to take. Rule number 2, verse 13, you shall return the security to him when he needs it. For example, if it's his bedding, you have to return it to him when the sun sets. And take something else instead. And when the morning comes, bring him the collateral and take something else. Now, another Department of Labor law, timely payment of workers. Verse 15. On that day shall you pay his hire. When a worker works for us, we must pay him on the day that he finished. Unless you ask him for postponement. And if he agrees, that's okay. Or if you honestly don't have money. But if you have money and you're just pushing him away, come back another day, that is a prohibition. Now, verse 16. Individual responsibility for sins. A man should be put to death for his own sins. Children are not responsible for their parents' sins unless they continue in their parents' way. Now, verse 17. Treating poor people properly. You shall not pervert the judgment of a convert or an orphan. You shall not take a garment of a widow as a pledge. Anyone who is less fortunate, treat them with more dignity and consideration. Verse 19, gifts to the poor during harvest. When you reap your harvest in your field and you forget a bundle in the field, cannot go back and take it. You forget something, let it be for the poor. Verse 20, when you harvest your olive tree, do not remove all the splendor. Don't collect all the olives. Remove majority of it, but leave the uppermost olives on the tree for the poor people. Verse 21, when you harvest your vineyard, grapes, you shall not glean behind you. If a grape falls down, you have to leave it on the ground. If a grape cluster is not fully developed, this is called olelot. Not fully developed means it doesn't have the regular shape of a grape cluster. You have to leave it on the vine and let the poor people take. You take only the big nice ones, the small ones leave for the poor. Now, chapter 25. When there will be a grievance between people and they approach the court, it will be that if the wicked one is liable to lashes, the judge shall cause him to receive lashes. Now, how many lashes? There is a maximum. 40 minus 1 shall he strike him. He shall not add even 1 to that number. Which means we can only give the maximum of 39 lashes based upon doctor's evaluation. Every court, before administering physical punishment, they had a doctor evaluate the health of and the strength of the person, And if he can handle 39, we give him 39. If the doctor says he can only handle 10, we give him 10. If the doctor says he can only handle 1, we give him 1. Now, verse 4. You shall not muzzle an ox in its threshing. When an animal is working with ready-to-eat food, you have to allow it to eat. And now we have the law of yibum, which means levirate marriage. Levirate means marrying your brother-in-law. Normally, a woman is not allowed to marry her brother-in-law, her husband's brother. However, when brothers dwell together, they come from the same father, and one of them dies, and he has no child. He was married, and he died without leaving children behind. Or he had a child, but then the child died without leaving any grandchildren. The wife of the deceased shall not marry anyone else. Rather, her brother-in-law shall come to her and take her to himself as a wife and perform a levirate marriage. And the first baby that's going to be born will receive the soul, the neshama of the deceased brother. However, verse 7, if the man will not wish to marry his sister-in-law, for example, she may be much older than him, or he already has his own wife, and his wife says, no, I don't want you to marry another one, then he shall perform chalitza, releasing the obligation to marry the brother-in-law. Which means, in verse 9, she shall remove his shoe from his foot, spit on the ground in front of him, and proclaim, so is done to the man who will not build the house of his brother. And then she is able to marry anyone else. This mitzvah has spiritual significance. It relates to souls, and we give another chance for the brother who died to come into this world through his sibling marrying his wife. Now, penalty for embarrassing another person. If men fight, verse 11, if men fight with one another, and a wife of one of them approaches, and instead of hitting him normally or removing him from upon her husband, she stretches out her hand and grasps his embarrassing place. She embarrasses him publicly. She must pay monetary compensation equal to the embarrassment that she caused. And this applies not only to this case, but any case where public embarrassment is caused, there has to be evaluation and a monetary fine. Verse 13 and on, commandment to have honest weights and measures. A perfect and honest weight shall you have, a perfect and honest measure shall you have. For an abomination of Hashem your God are all who do this, who act corruptly. Anyone who cheats in business is an abomination of Hashem. And now, finally, the last paragraph of the chapter reminds us of the great mitzvah to remember what Amalek did to us, and reminds us to destroy Amalek. Remember what Amalek did to you on the way when you were leaving Egypt. That he chanced upon you on the way. You were not bothering him. You were not on his path. He just happened upon you, and he struck those of you who were in the back, the weakest ones. He didn't fight with you head on. He was a coward. He attacked you from behind. All the weaklings at your rear, when you were faint and exhausted. And he, Amalek, did not fear God. He knew you were coming from Egypt, taken out by God himself with all the miracles. He knew that you are being led to the land of Israel. You're being led to the Mount Sinai to receive the Torah. And despite all that, he attacked you. He rebelled against God, went against the people of God. Therefore, verse 19, it shall be that when Hashem your God gives you rest from all your enemies all around, in the land that Hashem your God gives you as an inheritance to possess it, you shall wipe out the memory of Amalek from under the heaven. You shall not forget. Our sages say that Amalek, who is the grandchild of Esav, represents the evil in this world. He represents violence, the rule of power, survival of the fittest without consideration for elderly and weak and sick, and that is evil. And therefore, we, the Jewish people who symbolize the goodness in this world, have an arch enemy, Amalek, that symbolizes the evil. And our struggle with Amalek will continue for the rest of history until Mashiach will come. When finally, as we say in our daily prayers, V'alu Moshim al har lishpot et har Esav, to the redeemers will come and judge the mount of Esav. Vaytal Hashem HaMelucha, Vaya Hashem lemelech al kol haaretz, and then Hashem will be recognized as king, once the evil kingdoms of the world are going to be destroyed. Until then, we are reminded not to forget the evil in this world and to fight against it until we wipe the last remainder of evil, both from our character and our society and the world. This concludes Parashat Tetze. Thank you for listening. Shabbat Shalom umevorach.